The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry hornets, casting harsh shadows on the linoleum floor of the bustling supermarket. In aisle 7, amid stacks of canned goods and forgotten shopping carts, Elias Harper's frail body crumpled without warning, his cane clattering away as he hit the ground with a thud that silenced the chatter around him. As shoppers gasped and rushed forward, a small, weathered envelope slipped from his coat pocket, fluttering open to reveal a faded photograph and a crumpled letter that would unravel secrets long buried in the heart of a lonely old man. Elias's vision blurred as the world tilted sideways, the pain in his chest sharp like a knife twisting slowly. He had felt it coming all morning, the tightness, the dizziness, but he pushed on, determined to complete his meager shopping list: a loaf of bread, some milk, and a can of soup. At 87, every errand was a battle against time and frailty, but today, fate had other plans. A young woman named Sarah, a cashier on her break, was the first to kneel beside him. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" she called, her voice trembling as she fumbled for her phone to dial emergency services. Around her, a crowd gathered, curious faces peering down, some offering help, others merely spectating. An ambulance was on its way, but in that suspended moment, Sarah's eyes caught the envelope on the floor. She picked it up instinctively, not to pry, but to keep it safe for the fallen stranger. The photograph inside showed a much younger Elias, beaming with pride in a military uniform, his arm around a beautiful woman and a small boy clutching a toy airplane. The letter, yellowed with age, was addressed to "My dearest Elias," in elegant cursive. Sarah's heart skipped as she glimpsed the words, "Forgive me for leaving, but know that our son carries your strength." She quickly tucked it back, but the damage was done. The image lingered in her mind, transforming the crumpled old man into someone with a story etched in loss and resilience. Paramedics arrived in a flurry of red lights and urgent voices, lifting Elias onto a stretcher. "He's stable, but we need to get him to the hospital," one said, checking his vitals. As they wheeled him away, Sarah clutched the envelope, deciding on impulse to follow in her car. She didn't know why. Perhaps it was the sadness in his eyes when he briefly opened them, or the way the photo evoked her own distant relationship with her grandfather. Little did she know, this act of kindness would pull her into a web of forgotten histories. At the hospital, Elias drifted in and out of consciousness, memories flooding back like waves crashing against a weathered shore. He recalled the day the letter arrived 40 years ago, after the war had taken his youth and his wife had taken their son, fleeing the shadows of his PTSD. "I couldn't stay," she had written, "but I'll always love the man you were." He had carried that envelope ever since, a talisman of regret and unspoken forgiveness, tucked away in his pocket like a hidden scar. The doctor, a kind-faced man named Dr. Ramirez, examined Elias with gentle efficiency. "Heart arrhythmia common at his age, but we'll monitor him overnight." Elias nodded weakly, his voice a rasp. "Just get me home soon." But as he settled into the sterile bed, he realized the envelope was missing. Panic surged through him. That small piece of paper was all he had left of his family, the only proof that his life had once held joy amid the ruins. Sarah arrived at the emergency room, out of breath, the envelope burning a hole in her purse. She approached the nurse's station hesitantly. There was an old man brought in from the supermarket. "I found this on the floor." The nurse took it with a nod, promising to return it to him. But Sarah lingered, drawn by an inexplicable pull. She peeked into his room, seeing him alone, staring at the ceiling with eyes full of quiet despair. On a whim, she entered. "Hi, I was there when you fell. I thought you might want this back." Elias's eyes widened as she handed him the envelope. You saw it," he whispered, his hands trembling. Sarah nodded, sitting beside him. "It looked important. The photo. Your family." Tears welled in his eyes, unbidden after decades of stoicism. "Was my family. Lost them long ago." In that vulnerable moment, Elias began to share fragments of his past, the jungles of Vietnam, where he earned a Purple Heart, the nightmares that drove his wife away, the son he never saw grow up. As the night wore on, Sarah listened, her own life paling in comparison. She was 25, stuck in a dead-end job, estranged from her family after a fallout over her dreams of becoming an artist. Elias's story stirred something in her, a reminder that regrets could fester if left unspoken. You know, she said softly, it's never too late to reach out. Elias chuckled bitterly. At my age, he's probably forgotten me. But her words planted a seed, fragile yet persistent. The next morning, Elias was cleared for discharge, his heart steadied by medication. Sarah offered to drive him home, and he accepted, surprised by his own trust in this stranger. His small apartment was a time capsule, faded wallpapers, dusty bookshelves filled with war memoirs, and a single framed photo identical to the one in the envelope. This is where I wait for the end, he said with a sigh, sinking into his armchair. Sarah glanced around, noticing a stack of unopened letters on the table. What are those? Elias hesitated. Bills, mostly, and one from a detective agency. I hired them years ago to find my son, but never had the courage to open the reply. Her eyes lit up. Let's open it now? Together. With shaking hands, he tore the seal, revealing an address and a name. Jonathan Harper, living just 2 states away, now a father himself. Emotion choked Elias as he read the details. Jonathan had searched for him too, but life had pulled them apart. He wants to know me? Elias murmured, disbelief mixing with hope. Sarah smiled, tears streaming down her face. See? What spilled from your pocket didn't just change everything for you, it might change it for him too. But as they planned a reunion, a knock at the door interrupted. An unexpected visitor stood there, a middle-aged woman with eyes mirroring Elias's. Dad? She said, her voice breaking. It was his daughter, whom he never knew existed, born after his wife left, and hidden in the letter's unspoken lines. The twist hit like a thunderbolt, reshaping the narrative of loss into one of hidden blessings. The woman's arrival sent shockwaves through the room, her presence a ghost from a past Elias thought was sealed shut. I'm Emily, she said, stepping inside with tentative grace, clutching a worn photo album. Mom told me about you before she passed last year. I found your name in her things. And then I saw the news about the supermarket incident online. It led me here. Elias stared, his heart pounding anew, not from illness, but from the avalanche of emotions. The letter had mentioned only Jonathan, but hidden in its folds was a postscript he had overlooked in his grief. Our daughter asks about you every day. How had he missed it? Age, denial, or the weight of years had blinded him. Sarah, still by his side, squeezed his hand reassuringly, her role shifting from stranger to anchor in this storm. Emily sat across from him, opening the album to reveal snapshots of a life parallel to his own: birthday parties, graduations, a wedding, all without him. Mom said you were a hero, but broken by the war. She wanted to protect us. Elias's voice cracked as he replied, I was broken. I let the darkness win. The conversation flowed like a dam bursting, regrets pouring out alongside stories of survival. Emily shared how she had become a teacher, inspired by tales of her father's bravery, while Elias recounted missions that haunted his dreams. Sarah excused herself to make tea, giving them space, but she couldn't help overhearing the laughter mixed with tears. It reminded her of her own fractured family, her grandfather, a veteran like Elias, whom she hadn't spoken to in years after a silly argument. Pulling out her phone, she texted him, thinking of you. Can we talk? The reply came swiftly. I'd love that. A small twist in her own story, sparked by this unexpected chain of events. As evening fell, Emily revealed another layer. Jonathan, her brother, was on his way. I called him after seeing the news. He's driving through the night. Elias's eyes filled with terror and anticipation. What if he hates me? Emily touched his arm. He doesn't. He has questions, like I did, but mostly love. The night stretched on, filled with anecdotes. Elias describing the toy airplane in the photo, a gift for Jonathan's 5th birthday, and Emily sharing how that same plane sat on her brother's mantle as a cherished heirloom. Sarah stayed, compelled by the unfolding drama. She helped prepare a simple meal, the apartment transforming from a tomb of solitude to a haven of reconnection. In the quiet moments, Elias confided in her. That collapse. It was a curse and a blessing. If not for you picking up that envelope, none of this happens. Sarah blushed. I was just there. Fate, maybe. But deep down, she felt the human value in it all, the ripple effect of one kind act echoing through lives. Jonathan arrived at dawn, his face a mirror of young Elias, etched with lines of a life well lived. The reunion was raw, hugs that lingered, words stumbling over apologies and forgiveness. "Dad, I searched for you," Jonathan said, voice thick. "But Mom said you needed space." Elias wept openly. "I needed you more." Emily joined the embrace, the family circle closing after decades apart. Yet, amid the joy, a subtle twist emerged. Jonathan brought news of a community center he ran for veterans, struggling with funding. "Your story, Dad, the war hero who carried on Allenite, could inspire donations." Elias, hesitant at first, agreed to share his tale. Sarah, inspired, offered to illustrate a booklet with her art skills, dusting off her long-neglected passion. Days turned into weeks, with Elias recovering under the care of his children. Sarah became a frequent visitor, her bond with Elias evolving into a surrogate grandfather-granddaughter relationship. She reconciled with her own family, the supermarket incident serving as a catalyst for healing old wounds. Elias's apartment buzzed with life, grandchildren visiting, laughter filling the air where silence once reigned. But shadows lingered. Elias's health remained fragile, reminders of mortality in every pill he swallowed. One evening, as they pored over old photos, Emily uncovered a medal tucked away in a drawer, a silver star for valor. "Why hide this?" she asked. Elias sighed. "Didn't feel like a hero after losing you all." Jonathan nodded. "You are now, for finding your way back." The community center fundraiser became a turning point. Elias spoke at the event, his voice steady despite nerves, recounting not just battles won, but the internal war against despair. The audience, moved, pledged support, saving the center. Sarah's illustrations captured the essence, portraits of resilience that hung on the walls, immortalizing the human spirit. Through it all, the envelope sat on Elias's nightstand, no longer a burden but a bridge. It symbolized how vulnerability could spark change, how one spill in a supermarket aisle could mend broken hearts. Sarah, reflecting on her growth, whispered to Elias, "You changed everything for me too." He smiled. "We all did, for each other." As bonds strengthened, unforeseen challenges arose, a health scare for Jonathan, drawing the family closer. Elias found purpose in mentoring young veterans at the center, his stories imparting lessons of forgiveness and endurance. The twist of Emily's arrival had not only reunited them, but highlighted the unseen threads connecting lives. With the community center thriving, Elias discovered a newfound vigor, his days filled with purpose beyond mere survival. Mornings began with calls from Jonathan or Emily, sharing updates on grandchildren's antics or center events. Sarah, now a regular, brought sketches that evolved into murals depicting veterans' journeys, symbols of hope adorning the walls. Yet, life wove in another unexpected thread. During a routine checkup, Dr. Ramirez pulled Elias aside. "There's someone here who'd like to meet you, an old comrade from your unit." Enter Marcus, a grizzled veteran in a wheelchair, his face lighting up at the sight of Elias. "Harper? Thought you were a ghost." The two embraced, decades dissolving in shared memories of foxholes and fallen friends. Marcus's arrival was the twist Elias never anticipated. He had been searching for survivors of their platoon, compiling a memoir to honor the lost. "Your name kept popping up in letters from the front," Marcus explained, pulling out a bundle of correspondences. Among them was one from Elias's wife, written during the war. "Tell him I wait with our child." It revealed she had reached out, but the letter never made it through the chaos. This revelation shattered Elias anew, but in a healing way. "She tried," he murmured, tears flowing. Marcus nodded. "War steals more than lives, it steals connections." The two spent hours reminiscing, their bond reigniting a fire in Elias. Sarah, witnessing this, felt the emotional depth, how past echoes could reshape the present, emphasizing forgiveness not just for others, but for oneself. Inspired, Elias collaborated with Marcus on the memoir, dictating stories while Sarah illustrated. Jonathan hosted readings at the center, drawing crowds eager for tales of heroism and humanity. Emily, ever the teacher, incorporated the stories into lessons for her students, teaching empathy through history. But challenges persisted. Elias's arrhythmia flared during a stormy night, landing him back in the hospital. Family gathered, fear etching their faces. "Not yet," Elias whispered, clutching the envelope. "Too much left to say." Dr. Ramirez stabilized him, but the scare underscored life's fragility, prompting deeper conversations. Jonathan confessed his own regrets, missed opportunities with his kids, while Emily shared fears of inheriting familial distance. Sarah, drawing strength from them, pursued her art full-time, quitting the supermarket job. "You all showed me it's never too late," she told Elias. He beamed, pride swelling. The twist with Marcus extended beyond friendship. He introduced funding from a veterans organization, expanding the center into a haven for more souls. As seasons changed, Elias celebrated his 88th birthday, surrounded by loved Onisa, far cry from solitary suppers. Grandchildren clambered on his lap, asking about the magic envelope that brought everyone together. He laughed, recounting the supermarket fall with dramatic flair, turning pain into a parable of serendipity. Marcus became a fixture, his wheelchair a symbol of unyielding spirit. Together, they visited graves of comrades, laying flowers and sharing silences heavy with respect. One such trip revealed another surprise: a letter from a surviving family member, thanking Elias for saving their father's life in battle. "You changed everything for us," it read, mirroring the title of his own transformation. The memoir's publication was a triumph, reviews praising its raw emotion and humanistic core. Elias held the book, fingers tracing his name, feeling worthy at last. Sarah's illustrations captured the essence, faces etched with pain and perseverance, reminding readers that every pocket holds untold stories. Yet, amid celebrations, Elias sensed an undercurrent of finality. His health waned subtly, breaths shorter, steps slower. He confided in Sarah, "I've lived more in these months than in years." She hugged him, whispering, "And you've taught us to live fully." The family planned a trip to his wife's grave, a pilgrimage for closure. En route, conversations turned introspective. Jonathan admitted, "I blamed you for absence, but now I see the war's shadow." Emily added, "We all carry pockets of pain, it's what we spill that matters." Marcus chuckled, "Amen to that." At the gravesite, Elias placed the envelope beside flowers, whispering forgiveness. Wind rustled leaves, as if in response. Returning home invigorated Elias, but fate twisted again. A young veteran at the center, struggling with PTSD, reminded him of his younger self. Mentoring became his legacy, imparting wisdom. "Let it spill, your story can heal." Sarah captured this in a portrait, Elias's eyes alight with purpose. As winter approached, bonds deepened, each person changed by the chain reaction from that fateful isle. Elias reflected on the human value, the kindness of strangers, the resilience of family, the unexpected twists that weave lives together. Winter blanketed the town in snow, mirroring the quiet peace settling over Elias's life. The center bustled with holiday events, veterans sharing warmth amid the cold. Elias, bundled in his coat, read from the memoir to a rapt audience, his voice steady, infused with the kitsch of hard-won wisdom. Sarah's art gallery debut featured pieces inspired by his story, canvases of spilled envelopes symbolizing revelation. "This is for you," she said, unveiling a portrait of Elias in the supermarket, light breaking through shadows. He teared up, hugging her like a daughter. "You've given me colors in a gray world." Family gatherings became routine, grandchildren's laughter echoing. Jonathan's kids called him Grandpa Hero, begging for war tales sanitized into adventures. Emily's students sent letters, thanking him for lessons in empathy. Marcus, ever the companion, joked, "We're the dynamic duo, old but gold." Yet, a final twist loomed. During a checkup, Dr. Ramirez discovered a complication in aneurysm, inoperable at Elias's age. "Months, maybe," he said gently. Elias absorbed it stoically. "I've had a second chance, that's more than most." Breaking the news to family was heart-wrenching, tears flowing freely. The revelation galvanized them. Jonathan moved closer, Emily took leave, Sarah visited daily. They created a memory jar, filling it with notes of gratitude and stories. Elias read them nightly, each one a balm. "Your collapse saved us all," one from Emily read, highlighting the profound change. Marcus shared his own near-death experience, offering solace. "We spill our truths before the end, that's the real heroism." Together, they completed a sequel to the memoir, focusing on post-war lives, emphasizing human connections over battles. As spring hinted at arrival, Elias weakened, bedridden but spirited. Visitors streamed, encounter patrons, old friends unearthed by the book's fame. A young man, the veteran he mentored, credited Elias with saving his marriage. "You taught me to let it out." The ripple continued, lives touched indirectly. Sarah organized a farewell gathering, not morbid but celebratory. Elias spoke last. "That pocket spill wasn't accident, it was destiny's nudge. Cherish your stories, forgive the past, embrace the unexpected." Applause mingled with sobs, the room alive with emotion. In quiet moments, Elias reflected on the journey from isolation to interconnection. The envelope, now framed, symbolized transformation. What spilled changed everything. He murmured, peace washing over him. One serene evening, surrounded by loved ones, Elias slipped away, a smile on his lips. The family mourned, but celebrated his legacy. The center renamed in his honor, the memoir inspiring thousands. Sarah painted a mural of him, envelope in hand, rays of light spilling forth. Jonathan and Emily grew closer, honoring his wish for unity. Marcus carried on the stories, ensuring Elias's voice endured. Sarah reconciled fully with her grandfather, bridging generations. In the end, the supermarket aisle became legend, a reminder that vulnerability sparks humanity's greatest changes. Lives intertwined, regrets redeemed, hope eternal. The autumn leaves swirled like forgotten memories around the weathered bench where Eleanor Hargrove sat, her frail hands clasped tightly in her lap, as if holding onto the last threads of a life unraveling. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of solitude, but it was the suitcase at her feet, old, scuffed leather with brass latches dulled by time, that drew the eyes of passers-by, until one concerned soul dialed the authorities. When the officers arrived, their boots crunching on the gravel path, they approached with cautious words, but Eleanor's vacant stare and refusal to speak ignited their suspicions, leading them to pry open the case. And what spilled out wasn't danger, but a torrent of history that froze them in stunned silence. Officer Ramirez, a young man with a badge still shiny from the academy, knelt down first, his partner, Sergeant Mills, hovering with a hand on her radio. The suitcase creaked open like a Pandora's box of emotions, revealing not weapons or contraband, but stacks upon stacks of yellowed letters tied with faded ribbons, black and white photographs curling at the edges, and a single, tattered journal bound in cracked leather. Ramirez picked up a photo at random, a young woman in a wedding dress, beaming beside a handsome soldier. The date scrawled on the back, 1942. "Ma'am," he said softly, his voice cracking with unexpected tenderness. "What is all this?" Eleanor finally looked up, her eyes misty pools of blue that held oceans of unspoken pain. "My life," she whispered, "or what's left of it." As the officers sifted through the contents, a crowd began to gather at a respectful distance, murmurs rippling like wind through the trees. Mills radioed for backup, not for arrest, but for understanding. This wasn't a crime scene, but a revelation. The letters were from a husband lost in war, promises of return that never came. The photos chronicled a family shattered by time, children grown and gone, grandchildren estranged. And the journal. Oh, the journal was the heart of it all. Pages filled with elegant script detailing Eleanor's journey from a vibrant girl in the roaring 20s to this solitary figure on a park bench. Ramirez read aloud a passage. "Today marks 50 years since I buried my dreams with him. The world moved on, but I stayed behind, guarding our story like a sentinel." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of human endurance, making the officers pause, their uniforms suddenly feeling too stiff against the raw vulnerability before them. Eleanor's story began to unfold in fragments as she spoke in halting sentences, prompted by the officers' gentle questions. Born in 1940 in a small town in upstate New York, she was the daughter of immigrants who fled Europe before the storms of war fully raged. Her father worked the factories, her mother sewed dresses by candlelight, instilling in young Eleanor a fierce sense of family and resilience. "We had nothing but each other," she said, her voice gaining strength as memories flooded back. By 16, she met Thomas, a boy with eyes like summer skies and dreams of becoming a pilot. Their love blossomed swiftly, a whirlwind romance amid the shadows of impending conflict. They married young, in a chapel adorned with wildflowers, vowing eternity just as the world plunged into chaos. Thomas shipped out to the Pacific in 1943, leaving Eleanor with a swelling belly and a heart full of hope. Letters arrived sporadically, each one a lifeline. "My dearest Ellie, the stars here remind me of your eyes. Hold on for me." She gave birth to their son, James, alone in a hospital ward echoing with the cries of other wartime wives. The war ended, but Thomas didn't return, missing in action, presumed lost at sea. Eleanor raised James on her own, working double shifts as a nurse, her days blurred by exhaustion and quiet grief. "I told myself it was for him," she murmured to the officers. "But sometimes, in the dead of night, I wondered if I was just surviving for the sake of it." Years blurred into decades. James grew into a man, married, had children of his own, two granddaughters who visited sporadically at first, then less and less as life pulled them away. Eleanor moved to the city, seeking the bustle to drown her loneliness, but age crept in like an uninvited guest. Arthritis twisted her fingers, memories faded at the edges, and the apartment she once shared with fleeting family echoes became a tomb of silence. The suitcase? It was her portable archive, packed one rainy afternoon when the walls closed in too tight. "I came here to remember," she explained, "or perhaps to let go." Ramirez, whose own grandmother had passed alone in a nursing home, felt a lump in his throat. He shared a glance with Mills, who nodded subtly they wouldn't haul her in. Instead, they called social services for support. But as the sun set, painting the park in hues of orange and regret, Eleanor clutched a letter to her chest. "Read this one," she urged, handing it to Ramirez. It was from James, dated 1975. "Mom, I'm sorry for leaving. The war took Dad, but it took pieces of us too. I promised to come back." He never did, lost to his own battles with addiction, dying young and leaving Eleanor to bury another piece of her heart. The officers sat with her now, no longer authorities, but witnesses to a life richly lived, yet profoundly isolated. Mills, a mother herself, thought of her own children and the fragility of bonds. "You're not alone anymore," she said, placing a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. The old woman smiled faintly, the first crack in her stoic facade, as tears traced lines down her weathered cheeks. In that moment, the park transformed from a place of solitude to one of unexpected connection, the suitcase's contents bridging generations and reminding all who listened of the quiet heroism in enduring loss. As night fell, stars peeking through the canopy like distant promises, Eleanor began to share more. The journal detailed not just sorrow, but acts of quiet kindness, volunteering at veteran homes, helping neighbors through hard times, even adopting stray cats that reminded her of lost loves. "I built a family from strangers," she said, her voice laced with a mix of pride and melancholy. Ramirez flipped through photos of smiling faces, patients she'd nursed, children she'd tutored, evidence of a life that touched many, even as her own circle shrank. Social services arrived, a kind-faced woman named Clara who specialized in elder care. She listened intently, her notebook filling with notes, but it was clear this wasn't just protocol, it was compassion in action. Eleanor hesitated at first, the idea of leaving her bench sanctuary daunting, but Clara's gentle persuasion won out. "We'll find you a place where stories like yours are cherished," she promised. As they helped Eleanor stand, her suitcase repacked with care, a young boy from the crowd approached shyly, holding out a flower he'd picked. "For you, Grandma," he said, unaware of the depth, but feeling the pull of humanity. The officers watched as Eleanor was led away, her steps slow but steadier with support. Ramirez turned to Mills. "That could be any of us one day," he reflected, the weight of the encounter settling in. In the quiet aftermath, the park bench stood empty, but the air hummed with the echo of a story that stunned not just with its contents, but with its profound reminder. In every solitary figure lies a universe of untold valor and vulnerability, waiting for someone to listen. Yet, as the patrol car pulled away, Ramirez couldn't shake a nagging detail from one of the La Terza postscript mentioning a hidden truth that Eleanor hadn't elaborated on. Little did they know, the suitcase held more layers, and Eleanor's tale was far from fully unpacked. Eleanor's arrival at the Elder Care Center marked a tentative new chapter, the building's warm lights a stark contrast to the park's fading dusk. Clara settled her into a cozy room overlooking a garden, where flowers bloomed defiantly against the encroaching fall. "This is your space now," Clara said, arranging the suitcase on a dresser like a cherished artifact. Eleanor nodded, exhaustion etching deeper lines on her face, but sleep evaded her that night. Instead, she opened the journal under the soft glow of a bedside lamp, her fingers tracing words written decades ago, reliving the twists that shaped her unbreakable spirit. Flashbacks flooded her mind, pulling her back to 1955, when James was 12 and the world seemed poised for recovery. Eleanor had taken a job at a local hospital, her nursing skills honed in the war's shadow. One patient stood out, Mr. Harlan, a veteran like Thomas, scarred by battles both seen and unseen. He shared stories of the front lines, igniting in Eleanor a spark of connection she'd thought extinguished. "You're stronger than you know," he'd told her, his voice gravelly from years of silence. Their friendship blossomed into something deeper, a quiet romance that filled the voids left by loss. But Harlan's health declined rapidly, lung damage from the war claiming him within months. In his final days, he gifted her a locket with his photo, whispering, "Carry me with you, Ellie." The locket now dangled from the suitcase's handle, a silent guardian. James, witnessing his mother's brief happiness and subsequent grief, grew distant, resenting the ghosts that haunted their home. "Why can't you move on?" he'd shout during teenage arguments, slamming doors that echoed like final goodbyes. Eleanor poured her love into him regardless, sacrificing dreams of travel or further education to ensure his stability. He excelled in school, earning a scholarship to college, but the day he left, a chasm opened. Letters from him arrived at first, full of excitement about city life, but they tapered off as he chased ambitions that pulled him further away. In the center, Eleanor found unexpected camaraderie among residents. Mrs. Lydia, a spry 80-year-old with a wit sharper than her knitting needles, befriended her over breakfast. "Saw the cops on the news last night. Your suitcase made headlines." Lydia chuckled, her eyes twinkling. The story had gone viral, a local reporter framing it as the suitcase of secrets. Elderly woman's treasures touch hearts. Eleanor blushed, unaccustomed to attention, but it stirred something within. Perhaps it was time to share more than fragments. Ramirez visited the next day, off-duty, compelled by an inexplicable pull. "I couldn't stop thinking about your story," he admitted, sitting across from her in the garden. Eleanor smiled faintly, offering him tea. As they talked, she revealed more from the journal. Her volunteer work in the 1960s, aiding civil rights marches despite risks, driven by a belief in justice born from her own injustices. "Loss teaches empathy," she said, her voice steady. Ramirez shared his own tale: immigrant parents, a grandmother left behind in Mexico, and a bond formed, generational divides bridging through shared humanity. But midway through their conversation, a twist arrived unannounced. A knock at the door revealed a middle-aged woman, her features a mirror of Eleanor's youth, clutching a newspaper clipping. "Grandma," she whispered, tears welling. It was Sophia, one of James's daughters, estranged for years after family rifts. The viral story had reached her via social media, jolting her from complacency. "I thought you were gone," Dad said. Her words trailed off, guilt etching her face. Eleanor stood frozen, then enveloped Sophia in a hug that released decades of pent-up longing. "You're here now," she murmured, the embrace a salve for old wounds. Sophia's arrival shifted everything. She explained James's descent, success in business masking inner turmoil, addiction claiming him in 1990. "He regretted leaving you," she confessed, pulling out a photo of James on his deathbed, a letter to Eleanor clutched in his hand and delivered until now. It read, "Mom, forgive me. Your strength was my anchor, even when I drifted." Tears flowed freely as Eleanor read. The words mending fractures she hadn't known still bled. Lydia, overhearing from the hallway, joined them, adding her own twist. "I knew your husband, Thomas. We served together briefly, spoke of you endlessly." This revelation stunned Eleanor. Lydia produced a faded medal, a token from Thomas passed to her in his final moments. "He wanted you to have this," Lydia said, placing it in Eleanor's palm. The medal, engraved with valor, symbolized not just war heroism, but the enduring love that survived oceans and time. As days passed, the center buzzed with Eleanor's story. Residents shared their own suitcases of memories, figurative troves of letters, photos, regrets, fostering a community of healing. Sophia stayed, committing to weekly visits, bringing her own children to meet their great-grandmother. "You've given us a legacy," Sophia said, helping Eleanor organize the suitcase's contents into a scrapbook. Ramirez returned often, inspired to volunteer at the center, his perspective on duty forever altered. "It's not just about enforcing laws," he told Mills later. "It's about protecting stories." Eleanor, once adrift, found anchorage in these connections, her journal gaining new entries of hope rather than sorrow. Yet, as Sophia delved deeper into the letters, she uncovered a hidden envelope marked, "For my family, open when ready." Inside, a document that promised to upend everything. A will, not of material wealth, but of untold secrets from Eleanor's past, hinting at a sibling James never knew about. The envelope seal broke with a whisper that echoed like thunder in the quiet room, Sophia's hands trembling as she unfolded the yellowed paper. Eleanor's eyes widened, a mix of apprehension and relief washing over her face. This was the heart of her guarded truth, buried for over 70 years. "I never told anyone," she confessed, her voice barely above a breath. "Not even Thomas." The document revealed a birth certificate from 1938, 2 years before her official records began. A baby girl, given up for adoption in secrecy, born from a youthful indiscretion before meeting Thomas. "I was 17, scared, and my parents insisted," Eleanor explained, tears tracing familiar paths. "I named her Rose, after my mother's favorite flower." Sophia gasped, the revelation reshaping family history in an instant. "So I have an aunt out there?" she asked, mind racing with possibilities. Eleanor nodded, pulling out a single photo from the suitcase's hidden compartment, a newborn swaddled in white, her tiny features a prelude to the woman Eleanor became. The adoption agency had promised anonymity, but guilt had gnawed at Eleanor through the decades, fueling her acts of kindness as atonement. "I searched once in the 70s, but hit dead ends," she admitted. Then life happened. Inspired by this twist, Sophia took charge, her tech-savvy skills turning detective. She contacted adoption registries, scoured online databases, and even enlisted Ramirez's help for official channels. Days turned to weeks, the center abuzz with anticipation. Lydia, ever the supporter, shared her own adoption story. "I found my birth mother at 60. It's never too late for miracles." Her words bolstered Eleanor, who found solace in group therapy sessions, voicing pains long silenced. Meanwhile, the viral story evolved, drawing media attention that transformed Eleanor's solitude into a beacon. A local news crew interviewed her, framing the suitcase as a symbol of elder wisdom overlooked. In every forgotten corner, Eleanor told the camera, her voice steady with newfound purpose, lies a story worth hearing. Viewers responded with letters of their own, sharing similar tales of loss and resilience, creating a web of empathy that enveloped her. Ramirez's visits deepened, revealing his own family fractures, a father absent due to deportation, a mother working tirelessly. "Your courage gives me hope," he said, helping sort the suitcase's treasures. One evening, as they pored over letters, a call came. Sophia had a lead. Rose, now Rosemary Caldwell, lived in a nearby state, a retired teacher with a family of her own. "She's open to connecting," Sophia announced, eyes shining. The reunion arranged swiftly, emotions swirling like autumn leaves. Eleanor dressed in her finest, the locket from Harlan and medal from Thomas around her neck, symbols of love's past. The drive to Rosemary's home felt eternal, Eleanor's heart pounding with a mix of joy and fear. Upon arrival, the door opened to a woman in her 80s, silver hair framing eyes identical to Eleanor's. "Mother," Rosemary whispered, stepping forward. The embrace that followed dissolved years of separation, tears mingling as stories poured forth. Rosemary shared her life, a happy adoption, but always a void. "I wondered about you," she said, showing photos of her children and grandchildren, Eleanor's extended family. They spent hours with the suitcase, letters and photos bridging the gap, A twist emerged. Rosemary had crossed paths with James unknowingly at a conference in the 80s. He looked familiar, she mused. Now I know why. Back at the center, Eleanor integrated this new branch into her narrative, the journal filling with entries of gratitude. Sophia and Rosemary coordinated visits, grandchildren meeting for the first time, laughter echoing where silence once reigned. Lydia organized a story circle where residents shared legacies, fostering bonds that combated isolation. Ramirez, moved by the unfolding, proposed a community program, Suitcases of Stories, encouraging elders to document lives for posterity. Mills joined, her skepticism melting into advocacy. "You've changed us all," she told Eleanor during a visit. As winter approached, Eleanor sat in the garden, suitcase now a display in her room, its contents shared rather than hoarded. She reflected on the park bench moment. What began as despair blossomed into connection, proving humanity's capacity for redemption. But one final envelope remained unopened, labeled Thomas's Secret, hinting at a wartime mystery that could redefine everything. The final envelope trembled in Eleanor's hands, its wax seal unbroken since Thomas's last letter in 1944. Gathered around her, Sophia, Rosemary, Ramirez, and even Mills formed a circle of support, the room thick with anticipation. "He wrote this before his final mission," Eleanor explained, her voice laced with trepidation. Breaking the seal revealed not just words, but a map sketched in faded ink, coordinates pointing to a Pacific island, and a note. "If I don't return, find visits for our future." Attached was a key, small and ornate, purpose unknown. Confusion rippled through the group. Thomas, presumed lost at sea, had hinted at hidden treasures? Ramirez's eyes lit. This could be wartime loot or documents. Let's investigate. With official backing, they contacted historians and Veterans Affairs. Research unveiled Thomas's unit involved in covert operations, securing Allied assets. The map led to a long-forgotten cache, possibly valuables meant for post-war rebuilding. Sophia and Rosemary dove in, tracing leads. A breakthrough came via an online forum. A diver had found wreckage matching Thomas's plane, artifacts including a locked box. The key? A perfect match. Arrangements made. They traveled to the museum housing the find, Eleanor's heart aflutter with closure's promise. Opening the box revealed not gold, but bonds worth thousands, invested wisely over decades, now matured to a small fortune. Thomas's letter explained, "For you and the child, Ellie. If I'm gone, use this to build the life we dreamed." Tears flowed. This was his final act of love, ensuring security from beyond. The funds transformed lives. Eleanor established a foundation for elder storytelling programs, honoring unsung heroes. Rosemary donated to adoption services, Sophia to addiction recovery in James's memory. Ramirez expanded his initiative, Mills advocating policy changes for senior support. Twists compounded with a surprise visitor, Thomas's comrade, now 90, drawn by news coverage. He survived the crash, the man revealed, lived on the island briefly, but succumbed to injuries. His last words were "of you." This affirmed Thomas's heroism, adding layers to Eleanor's grief and pride. Holidays brought the family together, grandchildren listening raptly to tales from the suitcase. Eleanor, once alone, now surrounded by love, journaled. "From a park bench to this life's twists remind us of resilience's beauty." As spring bloomed, Eleanor returned to the park, suitcase in tow, but this time with company. Sitting on the bench, she smiled at passers-by, her story a testament to human connection's power. The officers, now friends, joined occasionally, reflecting on how one suitcase stunned them into action, unveiling values of empathy, forgiveness, and enduring love. In the end, Eleanor's journey taught that solitude can birth solidarity, loss can forge legacies, and every life holds contents worth cherishing. The park, once a symbol of isolation, became one of hope, where stories continued to unfold.